Welcome to the Rogue Valley Water Solutions Summit number 5, dealing with and averting mistakes and disasters. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to enjoy again, back by popular demand, Taylor Humphrey video, Ode to Water. Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Rogue Valley Water Solutions Summit number 5. My name is Ryan Sims and I'm your host this evening. I'm here in the Talent area in the Anderson Creek watershed. I'm the co-director of Cultivate Oregon, and our purpose is to empower responsible food and farming. We're here today to talk about dealing with and averting disasters and mistakes. And we're joined here by my colleague and technical wizard, Stephen Williams, with the Community Website Partnership. The Community Website Partnership strengthens rural communities by bringing people together through technology. If you need support tonight, please feel free to send a message through chat to Stephen and he can help you or answer your questions. It's also really helpful if you're able to rename yourself so that you have your first and last name on the screen so that we can get to know each other and see who's in the room. Please do use the chat feature for comments or questions. Questions that are lingering in the chat, we'll be able to share with presenters or panelists, and we'll also follow up with different content experts to get those questions answered when that's possible. It is helpful if you remain muted during the program tonight, except for when we're in our breakout rooms and we're having conversations with each other and really talking about solutions. Our agenda this evening, we've got a great plan for you. Thank you. We have a beautiful water blessing that we'll offer. We have special guest panelists. We'll have breakout circles where we get to talk to each other. We'll have a larger share out in the big circle exchange in the larger group, and then we'll have closings, gratitudes, and appreciations. So I did want to just give a little plug for that the amazing work that's been done as part of the Water Solutions Summit that you're a part of this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first session or your fifth, But we are working to raise money to offset some of the expenses of the summit. And we've got this amazing online auction happening right now. And so we'll put that link into the chat. And if you haven't placed a bid or made a donation, if you could consider showing your appreciation through a generous donation, we would definitely appreciate it on behalf of the Water Solutions Summit team. There is an amazing flourless chocolate cake that I'm bidding on, and I don't think anyone else wants, but I really do. There's some great items there. Please check out. So without further ado, I'm really honored to introduce to you one of the Water Solutions Summit team here, and Lauren Oliver. Good evening, Lauren. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Rihanna. Good evening, all our participants. I'm delighted that you are here for the 5th session of the Water Summit. The Southern Oregon Pachamama Alliance has really been working very hard and with great enthusiasm and care for water. And we're so thrilled to have you here with us. You know, it's exciting to be in the 5th Zoom session of the Water Summit, knowing that this coming Saturday is our in-person session. If we'd had our druthers, we would have been meeting in person all along, but now we get our chance. And as one of our wonderful associates said the other day, on Saturday, as we form our action circles, now the work begins. So please do strongly consider clearing your calendar and joining us on Saturday. You'll have a chance this evening to RSVP. We'd like to know if you're coming. There is limited seating. We know we can make 50 or 60 people comfortable, but it's limited seating. And we really want you, your energy and your love for water to join us. So thank you. And of course, this Water Solutions Summit, this session and all the sessions are dedicated to Grandmother Agnes Baker Pilgrim, known to many of us as Grandma Aggie. She was a steadfast voice for water for many, many years, and her appreciation of water informs us still. So we always wish to remember Grandma Aggie, and in her honor, we invite you to raise your glass of water. Thanking water is what Grandma Aggie asked us to always do. Never take a shower, wash the dishes, have a drink of water without saying thank you to this amazing water. We are water babies. Water is the biggest constituent of our own bodies and the world around us. So please, thank you, water. Thank you, Grandma Aggie.
Thank you, water. Thank you, Grandma Aggie.
Thank you. Now I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. I invite you to settle in, take a deep breath as we become present to one another during our conversations this evening. As we gather, it's fitting to remember and honor the original nations who gathered in this valley before us. People who lived sustainably here for thousands of years and modeled a way of life that we can learn so much from. This acknowledgement was composed on the unceded land belonging to tribes who lived here and to those descendants who live here still. Though some tribal names may have been forgotten, we honor, name those tribes we do know, including the Tarkelma, the Latgawa, the Shasta, the Klamath, Modoc, and Yahushkin. We know the ancestors of this land were abused, were uprooted, and many were murdered by the colonists more than a century ago. But their love and respect for this land, the elementals, and all of the living beings here continue to bless this valley. We endeavor to learn from their living descendants, some of whom still live in the Rogue Valley, how we can live as they did with the love of the land and the water. Let's do what we can to dismantle systems of oppression that have dispossessed Indigenous people of their lands while denying their rights to self-determination. Let us take to heart the gift of observing their practices of working with natural systems for the benefit of everyone and everything, all our relations. Now, it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you our honored guest, Jennifer Bryant. Jennifer Bryant comes to us from the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians. She is the cultural program manager for the tribe. She has worked closely with their natural resources department to educate the employees and membership of traditional lifeways. This includes protecting the water, the flora, and the fauna. Jennifer, I'm so glad to have you with us. Please.
Thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure to be here today. As I was preparing for today, I just thought back to all the stories that our tribe has at the Cow Creek tribe, of all of the aspects of water where our stories talk about healing, renewing, rebirth, even bathing our deceased as they pass away. So water is so important to every aspect of our life. And it was just very important for us to continue that and pass that knowledge down to our children. So today I'd like to just give a blessing in Tagalma regarding water for everyone. So I am learning our language, so I am a bit slow, so I apologize, but I will do my best. So, Hapka Emnas, Nahanko Adana Ayete, He, Dagase, Gwanach, Abek, Quine, Al Hiowohe, Himwe, Hekwakt, Abek, Ga, Gaal, Yote, Abek, Tahi, Al Yowohink, Yowach, He, Gel Galu Gwanach, He, Win He, Gulu Gwanach, He, Bat Awehik, Kai, Wa, Alt Awak, He, Dapayot, Gel Galu Gwanach, Win Hemen, Gwala Yokanak, Wat Amechich, Gaal, Di Hilagwatan, Al Di Dapayot, Duwuk. And so what I said was, Creator, I am a Cow Creek person. The water and the earth, we are family. Looking back, our people have had water always. Because of that, we live. Looking forward, we want water to exist. We will help the water. Drive the evil out of the water. The water is blessed. We ask to help to be no more. I'm glad that we are gathered together. All are blessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was very beautiful. And I feel your words that will help us help the water and love the water and respect the water. Thank you for being here this evening. Bless you. So, and now I will turn the mic over to Katie Farrell. Katie is my fellow Pachamama Alliance, Southern Oregon Pachamama Alliance, and Water Summit organizer. Katie.
I'm so happy to see everybody here and welcome you to the 5th session of the Rogue Valley Water Solutions Summit. Tonight, we advance our attention to some serious systems explorations with topics related to land and water use. Impacts from fire, potential for flooding, forestry and drought, treating water for outdoor use, urban pressures, and the needed system overhauls. We hope tonight's program will help identify the most doable and effective solutions for water in our region. What could be accomplished to create equity for all water users, preserve the well-being of Jackson and Josephine counties for all the future, and consider how we can deepen our respect and gratitude for water while, quote, doing more with less. Our summit organizing team chose to study and educate themselves and the public on the existing sources and systems of water before diving into one of the most causal issues, that of climate change. Tonight, we will also be hearing about projections for our region's water supply, rain, snowpack, or lack thereof, which will really bring home the need to plan well and with earnest for diminishing and unpredictable future water scenarios. Tonight, I have the honor of presenting 6 distinguished guests. This has made a little change in our program, but I'm just going to read their name and credential and go back to the next phase of this. We have Larry O'Neill, Associate Professor from Oregon State University and a state climatologist. We have John L. Gardner, who's the Vice President and founding President of the Water League. Eric Dittmer will be joining us a little late, but he is well known and very knowledgeable, the SOU Professor Emeritus of Environmental Studies and also a key member of SOCAN. Carl Tappert is here. Thank you, Carl. Carl is the manager of the Rogue Valley Sewer Services. And Paul Sheldon is one of our dear advisors for the Water Summit and the leader of Emerging Futures. We also welcome Michelle Holman, who's a Lane County Community Rights and Oregon Community Rights Network. Due to this wealth of an abundance of wise advisors, we are asking each panelist to give a brief overview of their background and experience in water issues, and then answer one initial question, which is, what do you believe are the most viable and proactive solutions for water issues in the Rogue Valley? I will be calling on each of them in turn and hope their answers will also give us more supporting information for our summary and action planning session this Saturday. If time remains, we will be taking questions from viewers, so please post your questions in the chat, and any questions not addressed this evening will be answered at a later date, probably on our website. Also, each of our panels tonight will be guiding a breakout circle discussion where you'll have much more chance to hear from them and interact with other questions. So without further ado, I'm going to start at the top of that first list with Larry O'Neill. So Larry, what do you believe are the most viable and proactive solutions for water issues in the Rogue Valley?
Well, thank you for having me. So I'll start off by saying that, I think the solutions that need to be done should be done with a lot of community buy-in. So looking at what, instead of having a top-down solution, imposed on, various communities or whatever, that there should be a lot of community buy-in for whatever is needed. And so what I'm here to help provide is just to show what kind of changes that the region is showing for the future due to climate change and other issues. And, that is you can expect your our water supply to be more variable in the future with less reliance on snowpack and bigger differences between dry years and wet years. And so some of the solutions that, I think that, should be considered are ways of storing water between years. So whether that's a change in infrastructure, such as reservoirs or, other surface water bodies, I think that should be considered. And then also, we have a great resource in groundwater that, our groundwater systems can store water, although they recharge very slowly. So, in the Rogue Valley, wells can be 500 to 1,000 feet deep. And so that will be a big issue with determining, how we manage that groundwater more effectively. And if we should consider, other ways of recharging it more quickly during wet years so that the water is available during dry years.
Excellent answers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate those answers. It's going to help us a lot. And hopefully you'll be there on Saturday too. That would be so great. I'm going to move on now, I think, to John Gardner. John has a very long resume and just an amazing amount of experience. But John, what do you think are the most viable and proactive solutions for our region when it comes to water?
Right. Good evening. I'm a civil engineer by training, but my father was a biologist. And so I have always believed in working with nature rather than trying to control her. And so technology is wonderful, but actually we can do a lot more with our existing management of water, the water cycle. My claims to notoriety include several which actually bear on this subject. Firstly, bringing a holistic appraisal to river projects involving a host of fellow professionals, from archaeologists to zoologists, as well as the public, in a process based on environmental assessment as a communication tool to resolve issues and derive best practical environmental options, alternatives. Secondly, I pioneered river basin and tributary catchment, or ECHA watershed management, so that proposed change can be appraised in the context of basin dynamics in hydrology and land use. And all these are issues that we need to take on board. I pioneered modern stormwater management so that land use changes can be modified to retain as far as practicable the natural hydrological response of the basin or watershed. And those are some of the chief issues that I have, as I say, my claims to notoriety. In particular, I would like to focus this evening on the issue of stormwater management. We have, engineers have traditionally tried to get water away as fast as possible because it's a nuisance, isn't it? Well, no, it isn't actually. So nowadays we have a reversal of that policy. We seek to infiltrate at or near the point of rainfall, so much so that I would like engineers to try and take on for size the idea that we have no surface water outfalls into our rivers. If you let that sink in for a little bit, you realize what it means. We've got to get back to the natural system, the natural hydrological process, which essentially meant that a huge majority of the water, in some cases 100%, went into the groundwater. And that's what gave the fish their living. Anything else, my friends, is technology. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. I'm just saying we need to actually change our approach to improve on current practices which haven't worked so far. And another thing engineers need to watch out for is the science of fluvial geomorphology, which is talking about the interaction between water and soil or rock, and how accelerating the runoff through surface water outfalls takes us to flood issues and attendant problems of pollution and siltation downstream. So I would, if I want to sum up in one word what this evening should be about, in part, and that is infiltration. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was brilliant. And I have to mention again, look at your breakout sessions, because each of these people will be representing a breakout session related to what they've spoken to. Larry in particular is really going to be talking about climate change. And I think John is going to be talking about in that sewer affluent, what can we do about flooding, all those things. So next on my list, I think, is Carl Tappert, who's also here from the Rogue Valley Sewer Services. So Carl, do you want to tell us a little bit about your work and your experience, and then answer what do you think is the most proactive solution?
I'm also a civil engineer, and my wife is a biologist, so we've got that.
Nice.
I've spent the majority of my career in the wastewater industry. I've been with Rogue Valley since 1998, back when we were called Bear Creek Valley Sanitary Authority. And the angle that I look at this from is what we do with it once we've extracted it with the water. Once it gets into the pipes, once it gets into our houses, once it gets into our systems. And so my focus for, like I said, for most of my career really has been trying to upgrade, improve, and have the most efficient infrastructure that you have to transport the water, because you know you're going to have to extract it, you're going to have to pull it out, but the best use you can make of it once you've done that, and the most efficient you have your infrastructure once you've done that, stretches it a lot farther, reduces your overall demand and makes it a lot more efficient use of it once you've got it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Carl. I know you've had a busy time these days. We're so glad you're here, and we hope maybe you and Jenny Morgan, who's been on our earlier sessions, will be at the summary too and help us even more. I'm going to go back to our dear friend, Eric Dittmer, who is I call him my reluctant advisor because he tries to be retired, but he knows so much about water in our region as the emeritus professor of environmental science and SOU and a loyal SOCAN member. So Eric, we changed up things a little bit, and we're just having people kind of give a little overview and then answer a question about what do they believe is the most proactive and viable solution or solutions that we could muster in the Rogue Valley.
Yes, hi. I want to just address the issue of water that may be the least known because it's out of sight but not out of mind, and that's groundwater. We have a very complex geologic setting, a lot of fracture control groundwater, which means it has a lot of water in it for a short time and it takes forever to recharge. And 4-hour flow tests don't always catch it. I was part of a effort in the 90s to get a handle on our groundwater setting, and pretty much failed miserably because the well logs at that time were misleading. Too many 5-gallon-a-minute wells, which I found out later was what you needed to get a loan for your house. And my thinking on groundwater is that we should make every effort, and I'm glad Larry's here, to determine what the situation really is. It's not easy to do. It's complicated. It takes a long time. We had the USGS cooperate with Jackson County back in the 90s. We have a dozen monitoring wells, but you're probably going to need more than that. We don't have real thick alluvium like you might find in the San Joaquin Valley or Salinas Valley. And so we have people who have wells have gone dry or the water quality is bad, and they use up one of their pickups to go haul water once a week at the Medford Service Center. So my thinking is, if we're going to use groundwater as part of our sources, we'd better get a better handle on what and characterize what's down there. And I think that's a priority.
Eric, I just want to thank you again. You've been such an incredible support throughout. So we'll see you in the breakout group in a little while. I'm going to move on to my really great friend, Paul Sheldon. Paul is just also another fount of amazing information, and he's going to be presenting, I hope, a little video that kind of shows at the summary session how this all could flow together and be optimal instead of being kind of piecemeal and everybody's kind of struggling to see how it's going to work with the diminishing amount of snowpack and rainfall. So Paul, I gave him the hardest task. I'm so sorry, but I know you are quick on your feet, and we really couldn't get anybody to speak to the two funded projects. One of them being $5 million that Jeff Merkley has gotten for TID, and the other being a Big Butte Springs project to remove trees at the base of Mount McLaughlin and to expand the flow to the Big Butte Springs reservoirs. So, Paul, I don't know how you can enlighten us, but I'm giving you the floor with full confidence. You'll say something amusing or great.
Thank you, Katie. It's an honor to be included in this auspicious group. I'm just going to start with a brief introduction, and then we'll let the discussions go for the breakout group. I'm the president of Emerging Futures in Ashland, where we address community issues of regenerative living and doing together what we can't accomplish by ourselves. I got started on water issues back in the 1970s when my older sister, Hunter Lovins, and I helped to start the Tree People in Los Angeles in Southern California to talk about urban forestry and the importance of trees in maintaining watershed. And that led to the creation of Coldwater Canyon Community Environmental Education and Participation Center, which was one of the early sustainable living centers in Southern California. During that period, I also worked with David Brower, who founded Friends of the Earth, and Huey Johnson, who was the Secretary of Resources for California, to support the Mono Lake Committee, which was working to save Mono Lake before the LA Department of Water and Power sucked it dry. Shortly thereafter, Hunter and I helped to found the Rocky Mountain Institute in Colorado, which is a natural resources think and do tank, which addresses energy, water, arable land, national defense, and the links among those. They're still doing very well. They've moved from Aspen to Boulder. During that time, I was on the City of Aspen Planning and Zoning Commission, which was a very interesting perspective on planning and zoning issues. A while later, with John Gardner's wife, Christine Gardner, PhD, I co-founded a consulting group called Salix Associates, which worked to restore the forests along the banks of rivers and streams. And as Salix Associates, we helped to found the Friends of the Los Angeles River, which is something of a joke, except that it's real. The Los Angeles River is not just a concrete ditch. It's a watershed that runs 55 miles from the mountains to the sea. And through that, we created or assisted in the creation of the Los Angeles River Authority, which coordinated the work of 14 different agencies that had jurisdictions around the river. We hope to be able to do something similar in this region. Fast forward another 15 years, and I worked on a coal plants project to provide economic and energy alternatives to coal plants. And coal plants, of course, use a lot of water. And that was engendered by the proposal to build yet another coal plant on the Navajo Nation. And we were successful in stopping that proposal for the Desert Rock coal plant because of the water use of the plant. And there's lots of stories to tell there. One of my favorite themes and topics is watershed restoration bonds, inspired by when we were working on the coal plants work, realizing that in Arizona, the Central Arizona project that brought water from the Colorado River to create Phoenix, it was funded by a 50-year bond. So if we really put together our public resources to address issues of water, we can accomplish rather amazing things. The last 10 years, I've been largely dedicated to greening America's prisons. I wrote an audit standard for the American Correctional Association to evaluate sustainability-oriented and environmentally responsible practices in prisons, of which water is a major constituent, because prisons are dependent on water and sustainable water sources because they need to be absolutely reliably resourced forever. I'm very interested in proactive solutions around messaging. What kind of metaphors are we using to describe water issues? For example, conservation communicates freezing in the dark, whereas elegant efficiency can inspire people to do something that's both responsible and easy. And I'm also interested in large water users because it's my assessment that in this valley, we have plenty of water, less water than we had before, but plenty of water for residential uses if we collaborate with the historically large entitled water users to distribute water properly and pay attention to what are we using it for, not just where is it coming from. And a big part of that is where is it going when we're done with it, which is sewage treatment and effluent and things like garbage disposals, and where does our water go before it goes downstream. So those are just a few of the things that I look forward to talking about today, this evening. and in the small groups. And once again, I'm really, really impressed with the other people who have stepped forward here. The folks on this panel this evening represent an incredible combined resource. So thanks for including me.
Thank you, Paul. I guess we'll get into some of those issues in the breakout session, or maybe we'll have time for another question. You know, forestry issues and the drought, that is an important component. And I'm hoping maybe we have somebody from Loma Katsi here on one of the breakout sessions. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this round by introducing Michelle Holman. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for being here. We are all very appreciative of your presence, because rights of nature and Indigenous perspectives has been a huge part of the Water Summit, and something that we really want to expand. So I'm going to give you the floor, and if you want to tell us more about yourself and your relationship to water and what you feel are important solutions.
Thanks so much. I'm really honored to be here. I am a daughter of Southern Oregon. I grew up down there. So it's really beautiful for me to see who the stewards are living in my home area right now. So big up all you good people doing the good work. Yeah, I work with Community Rights Lane County, which is a charter member of the Oregon Community Rights Network, which is part of the National Community Rights Network. And what we do is empower local community members to challenge unjust law. Here in Oregon, we have the initiative system. It's not an easy task to use the initiative system, but it's the way the people legislate. And what we do is to challenge unjust law and replace it with law that is protective of nature and all her creatures. So the backstory with us is that we in Lane County have been trying to ban aerial herbicide sprays. And because we are a scrappy group and don't ever say no, we've been at this since 2012, and we have not stopped the spraying, but we also have not given up. We have not achieved our goals. The waters, wherever you live, are impacted by corporate harm. And so this is the kind of the foundation to the work we do. We write it right now. We have written an initiative. You can see this, Protect Lane County Watersheds. And this is a very proactive way of protecting what we have. And what it would do would be to stop the harm legally, because corporations have legal right to do whatever they want to do. And it's sanctioned by our government. So, you know, they're strange bedfellows. And if you're not super naive, this is not going to come as a surprise to you. We just have to have the spine and the courage of our convictions to protect the places we live. And if we want to protect the water, we're going to have to very strongly work to stop the harm that's created by the entities that are entitled to do just that. And I can talk so much more about it. It's what I live and breathe. I live in the Coast Range of Oregon on a creek, so I'm very intimately connected to the water right beneath my feet.
Wow, Michelle, that is so encouraging. You know, water rights has been one of the topics that continues to be front and center with all of our forward motion. And I have another question, since we've got through that one, that's really kind of related. So I'm going to put this one out there for everybody. How do we respect bodies of water and secure their rights under law? Can you speak to the difference between rights of nature and water rights? And ought Indigenous rights take some precedence over existing water rights? So that's kind of the three-part question. Maybe we'll just start at the top.
I would like to say, Katie, I am here, Belinda Brown.
Oh, okay. Hi.
So I can take that question. And tomorrow I'm actually attending a Central Valley Water Quality Control Board for traditional and beneficial uses of water in the state of California. In 2017, we actually passed legislation with the State Water Quality Control Board in the state of California for cultural and beneficial use designation for fish, because there was no designation for fish and wildlife, and there was no designation for beneficial uses for Aboriginal people. Fish was the main diet. So the politic we face, of course, is fish and cows for water, so grazing. And then as far as groundwater rule legislation, up until 2014, there was no groundwater rule legislation in the state of California. So the billion-dollar question was, who controls well drilling in the state of California? So in the state of California, it was county by county, and nothing was acceptable. With California that regulates everything, there was nothing acceptable as far as that legislation went. So I believe that was AB 52, and I think maybe Paul might know about that. So in 2017, with cultural and beneficial use designation of water in California at the State Water Quality Control Board, I don't know what Oregon has, but that's where we exercise our Federal Reserve rights, senior water rights under the Winters Doctrine. And you might, if you don't already know it, that is our federal rights, and Winters Doctrine has stood the test of time in court. So you have those senior water rights that continue to be at the forefront of everything we're doing with the Klamath Dams, with salmon, with restoration, with traditional and beneficial cultural uses of being able to eat the fish, of being able to harvest plants, and all of those public uses too for recreation, because that's a lot of the public beneficial uses in California also. So I would say that legislation in California is kind of leading edge there, even though it's very political and very controversial. And you're going to have some of the same issues in Oregon, and somebody can speak to maybe the Oregon rights of Indigenous people.
Well, thank you, Belinda. I think you're in one of the breakout sessions later. Is there anybody else on the panel that would like to jump in? Paul, she mentioned you. Do you have, or anybody
Well, I
else?
just want to echo the importance of what she said. With Salix Associates and Dr. Christine Gardner back in the early 1990s, we did a little bit of work with the Hupa tribe and the Yurok tribe, and the importance of reintegrating the knowledge and resources and honoring the traditions of the traditional tribes, not just in California, but everywhere, cannot be understated. The perspective of the rights of nature and nature as a living presence and as a citizen, nature being on par with humans, or in my personal opinion, vastly superior to humans, and having humans consider themselves as parts of nature, not separate from nature, and principles like the river flows through us. And it was actually Dr. Christine Gardner who introduced me to the concept of intact watersheds, which basically don't exist anywhere, most places. But Dr. John Gardner's work on rewilding and a sensitivity to recognizing that we can reintegrate the rights of nature into our urban and suburban living is really important. So Belinda, thanks so much for speaking up for that.
I would like to say one more thing is Ashland's own Stuart Reed is helping us with North Fork of Pitt River for red band trout surveys. So hats off to Ashland there.
Thanks, Belinda. I think John has his hand raised. After that, I'm thinking maybe to go back to Eric and Larry and maybe get a little bit of a feel for some of these climate projections, since we seem to have a little bit of time. So John, let's hear what you have to say about the previous question, and then we'll go to a little climate talk.
Thanks, Katie. I just quickly wanted to mention CELDEF here.
Oh, yes.
We met Thomas Lindsay, 10 years ago at the ELOR conference. And he has done amazing work. I don't think he was involved with the New Zealand doing the rights exist of a particular river out there. And I'm sorry, I should have prepared a list. There's several cases like this throughout the world, but I know, assisted greatly the government of Ecuador in their rights of nature legislation. And if anyone can help us, ELAW can. In fact, they're helping. I forgot to mention, I'm vice president of Water League, and they're helping us with our current efforts to improve our water resources situation in Oregon.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, we've done a fair amount of work with CELDEF in the past down here. And Kai was one of our presenters or a breakout session. Actually, I wanted to also mention to Michelle, we'd love to have you as part of the summary session. We'll probably have a table about water rights. We'll definitely have all these different topics, but people who are going to move to a table. And I'm also thinking our team may put together a model of the water summit, that what we did, how did we create this? Because the 4 women all over 70 who started this, we just said we need to do something about water. But we have kind of a plan that we could export to every watershed in the state and make it simpler for them, because it's been challenging, but we've created such an amazing team. So I want to ask again, maybe Larry and then Eric, can you just give us a rundown a little bit on what does our climate, how limiting is it? What does that really look like for the future here? So Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll keep it brief. So I talked a month or two ago with your group about just some of the climate model projections for Southern Oregon. And maybe just to summarize real quickly is that, the last possibly 20 years have been kind of a dry run for conditions that we'll probably experience more in the future. And what I mean by that is that, we're not going to get too much less rain in these projections, but we're going to get a lot more evaporation. And, it looks like that, maybe, there'll be about 5 or 10% less water in the landscape because of that. So as the climate warms, it increases the evaporative demand from the landscape, from all the, trees and vegetation. And so we can expect that there's just going to be less water because of that. The second thing is that our precipitation is projected to be more intermittent. So there'll be wetter wet years and drier dry years. And then the third thing is that our snowpack will become a less reliable reservoir of water that we need to store in the winter, so it makes it out in the summer. And not only become less reliable, but it's also going to become less in time. So it's like a reservoir that shrinks over time. And that's just because the snow levels are slowly going to increase over the coming century. So we're just going to have less snowpack there. And one of the main things that this will do to for instance, our stream flows, the watersheds, our supply of water into the watersheds, is that stream flows will become higher in the wintertime and then much less during the summertime when we need that water the most. And it's that change in how water is supplied to us that I think we really, it's obviously very unnatural. And I think it really is going to call for, further resiliency. So, I love all these ideas about, increasing our natural system, watershed restoration. I think these are all, great things to hear about.
Thank you. That was a good summary. I get it. Eric, do you have some ideas to add? I know that you are very immersed in SOCAN's work, Southern Oregon Climate Action Network.
Well, I've learned enough from SOCAN to say that Larry exactly and succinctly described our climate setting and what it's going to be like in the future. So one of the ramifications that I've would like to highlight is that a couple of decades ago, the irrigation districts noted that if the reservoirs, Hyatt, Howard Prairie, Emigrant, for example, are very, very low, then it would take 3 normal precipitation years back then to fill. Now, with the evaporation increasing with increasing temperature, my suspicion is that it will take more than 3 years, especially coming up right now with the reservoirs. I've never seen them so low in my 40 years of working here. So that's a ramification. Okay, then, let's build more reservoirs. Well, we've filled most of the available holes. There are some plans to expand Immigrant, Hyatt and Howard Prairie, but those are big dollar items, as is the Wise project. But the management of those irrigation reservoirs is going to be paramount. And we have to keep in mind that the transfer of water is using 100-year-old technology with evaporation, infiltration, and losses. The WISE project would be great, but unless anybody here on this Zoom call has $500 million or maybe a little bit more, that's going to be a federally supported project. And the way that's being dealt with now, I think makes some sense, although it's going to take a while. And that funding for a segment of irrigation canals at a time. And that's in fact going on, but it's going to take a lot of time for 300 miles of irrigation canal.
Wow. Well, thank you for answering one of my mystery questions, and maybe we'll learn more about forestry and Big Butte Springs plans later on. I think I have maybe time, and I just want to kind of ask this one question to Carl. Carl, you're not going to like this. What would it take to treat sewer water for outdoor use, like landscaping, golf courses, and parks? What would what would have to happen for that to become a new source of reclaimed water?
There's a difference between a park and a golf course.
Okay.
Because a golf course, you can restrict access to that, whereas a park, you can't. So there is a very big difference in the level of treatment that's required for areas that have unfettered public access to that. But for a golf course, I printed out the chart that the EQ prints here. But for irrigating a golf course, you're basically treating to a Class C effluent is what it's called. Most of the treatment plants in this area could probably meet that with little modification. Ashland could meet that. Medford could meet that. Shady Cove could meet that. It's a matter of testing and making sure you have your disinfection right. So the quality of the effluent to irrigate a golf course or something like that, where you can restrict people from being on there for a period of time, that can be met probably with what you have right now. How you get the water from your treatment plant to that site is a different issue because you've got some pumping involved with that. If you want to go to something where you're going to irrigate a park, where it's open to the public, you're taking that to a much higher level of treatment.
Right.
Water quality. It has to be filtered. It has to be meet very tight turbidity standards. It has to meet real low bacteria standards tested on a daily basis. So it can be done, and people do it, but it is a higher level than I think most folks around here have.
I was trying to get a man named Eric Schroeder, who's the sewer supervisor at Cottage Grove, where they do have that system and actually doing quite well with it. I'm curious why Medford Reclamation District, and because most of the water now is actually treated, I mean, even Ashland water coming through the tap, Medford Water Commission. So how do we get them? I mean, it sounds like they would have to be involved, or is it a good enough partial solution for the public to push for it?
What was the question?
Okay, is that a good enough way to do more with less?
I think so. I think that the piece of the puzzle that is the hardest is where do you want to put it and how you want to get it there. If you're talking about the regional treatment plant that Medford operates on the Red River, I mean, that's 5 or 6 miles away from town. So if you pump it, you're going to turn around and pump it all the way back up. That's a lot of piping and a lot of pumping effort. And it's sometimes hard to justify that expense.
Well, I know you're going to be in a breakout session, and Julie Atkins, who's the mayor of Ashland, has been proposing some things in Ashland similar. So I guess we'll get some more information from the notes, and I think I better turn it back. I think it's time, but thank you all.
Katie, I'd like to add one thing real quick. City of
Please.
Ashland, actually, that is an excellent segue into the forestry, because Loma Casa, City of Ashland, and the Forest Service have been maintaining the Reeder Reservoir, which supplies water to Ashland. And the City of Ashland actually has a tax to maintain some of that maintenance for forestry up there. So that is something possibly we could discuss in the forestry related to water.
So you're going to be in the forestry with Gary from SoCan, correct?
No, Aliana is. I will be in the Indigenous breakout.
Oh, wow. Well, we're inviting everyone to the summary session on Saturday. And there's so much work to be done, but we're going to have circles and we can talk more about these really elusive and interesting topics and learn more and see what we can do. So thank you all, panel. You are all just genius, and I'm so appreciative for our team to have so many amazing, credible advisors and people to really support this just kind of basic intuition that we all had of like, we got to do something about the water. So I'm going to turn it back to our other hosts, and thank you all. And we'll get back together after the breakout rooms.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, panel. Very, very exciting conversations and pique a lot of curiosity about how we can get our arms around these kinds of solutions. So now we're going to go into the breakout circles. So to prepare for that, I'd like to briefly talk about the roles that people will take in the breakout circles. Each group will have one or two or even three in a couple of cases of conversation support people who bring some knowledge about the topic. But then we also have volunteer roles that we would like you, the participants, to pick up. Let's begin with the guardian. Let's plan to all be guardians, respecting each other's speech and the time. And as a guardian, if you notice that someone needs a tip to step back or to step out, if you haven't heard from them, please speak up. The scribe is a very important role. The scribe will make brief notes in the shared Google Doc. There is a Google Doc link in the chat. I think Stephen is sharing that Google Doc link in the chat right now. And if you think you would be ready to take notes as a scribe for your group, please pick up that Google Doc link so that you can take notes for your breakout circle. And then a facilitator. The facilitator here is really to start that round of sharing and to jump in, to say your name, where you're from, and say a bit about what you're interested in or the pressing question that you want to bring forth in the conversation. So please, Stephen will shortly show us the topics, the circle topics for this evening. And I want you to take note of the topics and the number of the topic that you are interested in. We have 6 breakout circles this evening with different topics. So as you look at the number and name of where you want to be in the discussion, in just a moment, Stephen will open the breakout circles so people can join the circle with that number where you want to be part of the conversation. When we get back, we will look forward to a report out from each of the scribes or whoever you designate as a reporter for your topic. So it's up to you to have a rich conversation, ask your questions, come up with your solution ideas, and we'll see you back in 25 minutes. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. I know we just got whisked through the universe here back into the portal of the Rogue Valley Water Solutions Summit. Thank you all for your thoughtful conversations and your breakout circles. And now we have the opportunity to hear from each other and to learn from what was shared in each circle there. So we will offer a chance for each group to offer a little report or sharing out. We just are really thankful for all of the great ideas and productive conversations. So we'll go through each breakout circle one by one, and if you could unmute yourself to share. We'll start out with group number one, and we would love to.
Well, I offered to take notes if that's all right.
Great, Alan, thank you.
All right. So we are the group talking about the rights of nature and indigenous rights of water. And Michelle Holman started us off talking about how these water has a right to exist and how we're starting up for the future and we can't be co-opted by government officials or by corporations in protecting water. And Gordon Lyford said he's interested in water rights for a long time. Fish need a certain amount of water to exist. And we've been taking out far too much water and depriving our fish of what they need to live. Bella Riverspoon said that how we frame these issues is so important, and the terminology has been, prepared for us by the powers that be, and we need to take control of that terminology and start speaking in terms that will promote water rights for our nature and so forth. So there's a big bias in terminology, in other words, that we're dealing with. Belinda Brown said we need allies in our battle, and we all need to be responsible now for water and nature. And when these things become commodities, we lose. She says we need to work together for legislative solutions. But Michelle spoke back on that and said that her group is turning their backs on legislative solutions because they get co-opted too easily. And she thinks the way to go is through the initiative petition process and put measures on the ballot to address these problems. Because the legislative system, she insists, is broken and can't be fixed. But Belinda said that in her group, they have Aboriginal people who they work with in the legislative process, and it is working and they have made progress. So Jeff Parson said some communities have been able to get legislative rights over nature, at least in some communities, if not in large areas. Talia Rose, a ceremonialist, and I take it an indigenous person, before we can move forward with legislation, she said, we need to take steps of, as she called, a receptive will, which is listening very carefully to everything and everyone, especially to nature, before we move forward with legislation, so that we can be sure that we are grounded in the truth and what needs to be done. We've forgotten how to listen, she says. So there's a current that informs everything, all the currents of life, and we need to plug ourselves into that in order to do the right thing in regards to the rights of nature. A couple of people just thanked the rest of the group for all the wisdom and love that they brought to the discussion. And one said, "I can feel it in my heart. All that you're doing and all that you're saying is making my heart warm." And so another person, Linda, said, "Early in life, I realized that what really touches me is nature." And so ever after that, she's been working for these things. Rihanna noted that the initiative process has worked right here in Jackson County, or is Lauren maybe. I can't remember if it's Rihanna or what. But anyway, I think it was Rihanna said in Jackson County, we passed a measure back in, I think, 2015 or 2016 that outlawed, banned GMO from our fields, from our agriculture here in Jackson County and in Josephine County. So the initiative process is a way to move forward. Thank you.
Actually,
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Alan.
what was that? Katie, Katie.
Belinda or Michelle, would you like to add to that at all? Or Belinda Brown, if you're still on, if you'd like to add anything, or Michelle, if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that it is a multi-pronged approach. We have many ways that we can come together and work together, both in legal and in initiative processes. And really, I think for political will, it is important that we do understand what our strengths are as agencies, what our strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats are as people, and then come together in one mind and one accord, be able to listen, like we heard, to each other, and being able to really, like a sports team. I'm a sports mom, a wrestling mom. So, you want to get everybody positioned in the right place. And then it's timing. A lot of this is timing. Timing is sacred in the Aboriginal Indigenous way. And so what I wanted to get done 20 years ago is just now getting done. And so, patience is a virtue. I always say I have virtually none. And that is true in so many ways of, seeing the freight train coming and knowing we're all going to get hit and not wanting us to get hit because that mom in me, but knowing that we have to do something quickly. And so, like I said before, it doesn't matter what color earth suit you're wearing. It doesn't matter what agency, where we're coming from. There's no wrong door of how we can become involved and how we can address these situations. You can't legislate righteousness. You can't do that. You can't change people's hearts. But hopefully you can touch people's hearts with the right information that will get them to want to change.
Thank you, Belinda.
I really feel you, Belinda, and I think your heart is clearly in the right place. And we're all actually trying to be our authentic versions of ourselves, doing the work that speaks to us, the work that Community Rights Lane County is involved in, and the Oregon Community Rights Network, under the auspices of CELDEF, by the way, is a different tact. And I think, essentially, we have to have a different relationship between humankind and nature, and this empowering people to create democracy right where we live. Because reality is, we don't live in a democracy. We think democracy is a good idea, and we ought to try it. And the way we try it is we do the work ourselves. So a government of the people, by the people, for the people depends on a work ethic from the people. You can't just elect people because they aren't really doing the work for us. Check out celdef.org, and see if it speaks to you. It speaks to me after 40 years of trying it through the in the box kind of activism. This spoke to me, and it might speak to you.
Would you put it in the chat, Michelle, please?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you to everyone in group one. And just as a reminder, it is so valuable to have the reports from each group in the Google Doc in those notes documents. So thank you to our scribes for helping to create a valuable record of these really potent conversations today. Next, we have group number 2, please. Was anybody available? Hello.
Hello, I was the scribe for group 2.
Great, thank you.
We discussed forestry issues, drought impacts, fires and runoff, and other things. And we discussed how the concept of restoration forestry is really fundamental to our relationship with water, how it's important to have an ongoing conversation with the trees around us and recognize the intelligence of ancient civilizations of tree species like redwood. Our group was concerned about responsible stewardship of water, and we attempted to define the role of natural landscapes and forests and hydrological cycles that are the ones that we depend on. So we came up with something like water moves through the hydrological system of time, flora, forest, geology, and topography, providing ecological services to communities. Water recharges and maintains. Balance is key. So those are the kind of the guiding phrase that we worked on in our session. And we discussed how it was important to prioritize old legacy trees, and that as we're looking at these densely crowded forests with small trees depleting groundwater, there are examples like the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project that show after 12 years how we can work in this space and provide an ecological benefit and community benefit that's supported by the city of Ashland and the people that live there. We talked about how there's a degree of unknown. We can only project so much, and we're living with a lot of circumstances that we can't know as much as we'd like to think that we can. And the final thing that was stated that I found really powerful was that our old growth forests are elders themselves, and they communicate with each other in their root systems. And we can surrender to that knowledge and experience in our search for answers.
Thank you, group 2. Appreciate that. Thank you for that sharing. Okay, next we have group 3, please. Anybody willing to?
Thanks. This is Paul Sheldon.
Hello.
I was the scribe, but put my notes in the wrong doc, so I'm just copying them over. Our topic was funded projects in the works. What are the plans for Talent Irrigation District? What are the plans for Big Butte Springs? And what are the potential impacts on domestic water supply, fish-bearing streams, wildlife, and forests? We weren't able to get to all of those subjects, but we did our best. We started with the TID funding, where Jeff Merkley has arranged for $5 million worth of funding for infrastructure improvements. It sounds like most of that is going to go to one specific section of piping. Aaron Haldeman from New Mexico was interested in these topics, and also interested in exploring regenerative art, public placemaking, and the ways that those can impact the future and planning. For example, can watershed restoration bonds and other agencies combine resources for public art and recreation, earth and water collection, storage, infiltration, healing, creative art? Can those kinds of things link together to create impactful restorations, such as the projects that are being discussed for TID and Big Butte Springs? Gwen Davies has lived in this valley for over 50 years and was interested in the TID system and the planning there. In that context, Aaron was interested in combined use of solar photovoltaics and covering ditches. When we're covering ditches, can we use solar panels as part of the cover? And Gwen shared that mostly it's open pipes from Howard Prairie to Immigrant Lake. We did have some additional discussion about the upper reaches of the watershed that feed into the TID. And I noted that TID does not identify individual large water users, but they will, through a public information request from their website, share addresses of large water right holders. And in my calls with them, they have said that obviously the large water users are the orchards with some hay and alfalfa. They won't reveal individual names, but if we file a request, they will provide additional information about where those large water uses are. So I'm going to follow up on that. Gwen was concerned about open pipes and ditches in the upper regions that feed into the TID system, and how do we track water loss from those unlined ditches. Aaron and his companion Sarah Corbett, joining from New Mexico, were asking about, are the ditches concrete or dirt, and how are we tracking that sort of thing. They shared that there are some innovative projects in New Mexico, which they put a little bit more information in the chat about, that involve public participation processes for irrigation ditches and rallying and inspiring members of the public to help with maintenance of the ditches and those sorts of things. We definitely need more information about Big Butte Springs. I wasn't able to get enough information to facilitate the dialogue. Julie Smitherman hadn't returned my last minute phone call. And so I will follow through to try to get more information about Big Butte Springs, but we did discuss about the potential impacts of removing trees, and are these trees that are regrowth after logging, then are therefore a dense single age stand or monoculture, that where returning to sustainable forestry would be useful. But we do need to encourage biodiversity, and none of us knew if Lomacatsi is involved in that Big Butte project. So that's an item for follow-up where Paul will get more information. And that's all we got to.
Yeah, I'll just answer that real quick. We do have a contract with the Medford Water Commission, and I put it in the chat to protect the water source of Big Butte Springs. There are treatments available for review, I am sure. And you can follow up, and Aliana's on here. She's a communications associate for Lomacatsi. We could get you information in regards to that. We have contracts with both City of Ashland and with Medford Water Commission, and working in the forest to protect those watersheds.
Awesome. I'll get in touch with you directly, Belinda. I assume Katie knows how to reach you.
Aliana, could you put that in the chat for them, and we can get them the information they need for both of those watersheds, whoever may want that information. Thank you very much, Aliana.
Great. Thank you, Belinda, for adding to the conversation there. And thank you to Group 3 for the thoughtful report. Thank you, Paul. Next, we've got Group 4. Is
Yes, Brianna Bell is the scribe for Group 4, and I wish I had the scribe for Group 2 over my shoulder. Mine are a little more jammed together, so I've just pulled them apart. We had a lot in there: urban development and water, rezoning land in areas that are water sensitive, housing density, landscaping, drought, real estate, new construction, development, blah, blah, blah. How might we approach urban development differently to be able to use less water? Well, I think it just went into lots of, it's a big topic, and where we ended up going in various ways was, concerned, of course, with the build out, what's the infrastructure? What happens when developers are sort of coddled and invited to come in and develop these huge projects, and then leave the urban area to deal with the infrastructure of the water, of all the things that are left, and kind of take the money and go. So the developers, Katie mentioned, they sort of swoop in and do their thing, and Shelley works as a realtor in Ashland, Medford, and Grants Pass. Really reports on people moving into more rural areas where they need more water, and has been looking into rezoning and finding that it's very costly proposal to take on rezoning an area. And Katie kind of wondered if costly rezoning is good news. And Katie further brought up that 90% of the water is used by big ag farms. And then the water rights question, the whole hierarchy of water rights came back up. Cody, urban planner, spoke of how in Oregon we have one community and then another community because we have urban growth boundaries. Whereas in California, you might just be in the experience of going from one city right into the other city because they don't have those urban growth boundaries. And Cody reports that in their speculation, there will be, and I'm not quite sure if you said, Cody, 10 years, a proposed million people will be moving into Oregon in the next, was it 10 years, Cody?
25 years.
Oh, 25 years.
It will grow by.
And he thinks that's probably a low estimate. People are moving to Oregon, and where do they go? You know, they either go into the suburbs, maybe into agriculture or rural land, but denser, compact, mixed-use neighborhoods are really going to be more and more necessary. He brought up the Pearl District in Portland. You know, it's really a new way to start looking at a much lower carbon footprint, and went into detail about how much more feasible it is to have this denser look. Climate change, you know, let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself. And then Shelley reported that the millennials really love, they actually love to be in that kind of denser look. They like to be right there, don't want to drive. So they think the denser is better, advantage of living closer. Helga brought up the need to possibly change people's minds about how to make other choices more appealing. And I, hearing Helga, sort of felt as though, you know, this aspect of it starts with reimagining the American dream of, you know, everybody having their own little house with white picket fence and yard and 2-car garage, and that we're going to have to really start looking at the density. I mean, the number of people on the planet, the climate, the water, the resources, you know, this is, you know, all been reported on today, and really sit down at the table and start to look at this, you know, together. I mean, I think that the indigenous way of together. Cody brought up exclusionary zoning and explained that it's slowly being peeled back, kind of to do deregulation within a regulatory framework. And then ADUs were brought up, additional dwelling units. I said, you know, we have to, I said, reimagine. And the homeless issue. I mean, people really increasingly without homes. And I think Cody said we'll need a lot more housing for the future, and thinks it's also, you know, that there are different chapters in our adult lives, you know, as a college student.
Well, we've got about one more minute because we do have 2 other groups. So
okay, and let me just let me end with this. Sarah came in at the last. Go to Place, PLACE, in Oakland, about water catchment. So that was our last little piece.
Great. Thank you, Belle. Thanks for that. It sounds like a really full conversation that y'all had there. Thank you so much for sharing. We are excited, though. We want to leave room to hear from group 5, and then we also still have group 6. So is someone available to share thoughts from group 5?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. And
thank you, Larry.
Anyone else from group 5, if you want to chime in too. So our group was looking basically at climate projections and adaptations. And for time, I'll just kind of briefly summarize a little bit what we talked to. So there were a number of conversations about the fact that there's deep concern for the ecology, for the trees, and a concern that climate change is happening faster than we're prepared for, and it's become more apparent. And there was some frustration expressed about the fact that, some people think that this this dry period is just a thing that will pass, when in fact it probably is an indication of the future. And we talked about other disasters, like for instance, someone in our group was from New Orleans, and we talked a little bit about Hurricane Katrina and how it was a kind of a disaster that was not anticipated and planned for. And, we're thinking that there's kind of shadows of that in, our current situation with water and how we're not working with it sustainably in a lot of places, and especially across the US West, but also in Southern Oregon. And so we also talked about just other ways we can adapt to it. And we had some examples about irrigation districts, irrigators going to, more conserving more water with their irrigation equipment, and also about other irrigation districts within Oregon that have, piped their canals, and how much water's that's being saved in the last few years in some of these projects. And that also brought up the idea that, or the conversation about how water users and farmers and irrigators may not be able to afford these technologies as well. And finally, I just want to bring up too that there's definitely concern and frustration that a lot of the human systems are not paying enough attention for the water, and that this group can provide a really good benefit for getting the word out to everybody for the next generations on how this is a kind of a slow brewing crisis in the making. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. And thank you to all that thoughtful feedback from group 5. We do have one more group to share out, that is group 6. Group 6, are you available to share some of the conversation that y'all had?
I can share unless somebody wants to preempt me. We didn't really assign roles in our group. So
okay, go ahead, Dorothy. Thank you.
I wasn't the scribe, but I did take some notes.
Great.
I just want to find the right page. Excuse me for just a moment. So busy taking down notes on everybody else's conversations, which all sound so rich. I love the structure of this meeting where we get to benefit from all the conversations, even though we weren't in them. Our group was talking about sewers and treated effluent being used for irrigation. And we talked about the fact that it is not only a useful source of irrigation, like for golf courses and so on, but that it is actually a way of recharging groundwater. That if you're not putting it on golf courses, you can put it on wetlands, which might even be a better place to put it as long as it sinks down and gets into the groundwater. And an important question to ask when you're looking at using treated effluent for irrigation is, what are you replacing? What water source are you replacing? Is it a source that will actually return water into our rivers and waterways if we do that replacement? There was some examples of the River Thames in England, where treated effluent is pumped all the way from Oxford up to Swindon, and the effort and cost and energy cost of pumping can be problematic. But the whole ick factor in using effluent, that 70% of people in the region of the River Thames were actually in favor of having their water recycled. So I'm pretty interested in how that public opinion got that way, because I think we need that kind of change here. We talked about some projects that went on in Medford, industrial pre-treatment before the industrial water even goes into the sewers, as well as a project from several years ago where farmers were, there was a big education project and farmers got on board to use treated effluent in farming, but that it was based on lowering temperatures of the water, and then the temperature change standards got changed, and then the project was killed. So there are a number of examples where you put in a lot of time and effort, and then it doesn't work anyway. And then we ended our conversation with a rich discussion of economics and how economics and justice, and how we tax ourselves to pay for the shared benefits that we enjoy as a society, and the importance of taxing the value of land more than we do right now. And what do you do about people who are land rich but cash poor? And we did not resolve that problem, but that was where we ended our conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Group 6. Thank you all for the very thoughtful conversations and information and solutions this evening. I do just want to take a spontaneous quick moment to acknowledge the incredible work of the Rogue Valley Water Solutions Summit organizing team. And I just want to take this impromptu moment to acknowledge Lauren and Lorraine, Katie, and Cynthia, who I know all had advisors and so much support. And if we can get Cynthia on, I think C.E. Taylor there. But I just wanted to give a moment to acknowledge these incredible women who have spent countless hours bringing us together over 5 sessions, and then will convene us together in person. And this was just such a big deal. This is really a historic moment. And I just would love for us all to send some good words into the chat and some love there for this amazing organizing team who have made history by bringing us together and bringing these incredible experts in the room so that we can learn together, but also have conversations that matter towards solutions in our own community here in the Rogue Valley. And so Lauren, Katie, Lorraine, Cynthia, thank you all so much. And to all of the advisors and supporters and people who helped and provided input, we're so grateful. We know that they didn't do it alone. It took so many hands to make this work, but just wanted to take this impromptu moment to honor this amazing team and say, thank you. You have made history, and what you have done here matters, and we'll get results. So thank you all. With that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Lauren to share a couple of special announcements.
Well, thank you, Rihanna. That really means a lot. And it's true, we worked very hard and we had a lot of support, and we are so grateful to all of you participants and the many ways that people have helped and made this possible. And, you know, as I said a little earlier, we know that Saturday, as we put together the action teams to actually take on problems that we wish to solve, the work is just beginning, my friends. And so we're so glad you're here. We really hope you'll be able to come on Saturday and that you'll stay in touch afterwards, because there is much to do. We've revealed a lot of the important issues, and we've just begun to learn what we need to learn, but it's time for action to go right along with our learning. So thank you so much. And you know, we've been asked a couple times if you would be able to donate. We do have expenses that we have a number of bills needing to be paid. So I think
that one, Lauren.
Pardon me?
Can I speak into that one? Since we
in 1 second, Belle, okay. I'm going to pass it to you. I'm just going to say that Stephen is putting a link in the chat right now if you want to give just a donation. And now to Belle.
Yeah. Well, because I want to thank someone here in this group that donated $250 by hitting the donate button at the auction site. So, wow. You know, and what a difference that made. And probably between now and last session, when we kicked off the auction, we know really distinctly that we need to create a couple $1,000s to really take care of our expenses. Right now, with that generous donation from one of our parties and some auction items that are been bid on, and there's plenty more, you have until noon on Friday. That's when the auction ends. We have $850 of the 2,000 that we need to raise. So I really do invite you to kind of open up your heart, come on Saturday and bring a checkbook or cash, because some of the items that weren't bid on will be there on Saturday. That also will be the place where you can pick up your item if you did win the auction. But yeah, there's some great things, and I just want to thank you all for being willing to stretch yourself in service of water, of who we really are. And don't forget to bring a bag lunch with you, so that we have some great work to do together on Saturday. So I'm really hoping that you're called to come forward and be in person with the team and all of us together. It will make a big difference putting that kind of completion to this.
And thank you, Bill, for putting together this fabulous, artistic, eclectic, adventurous online auction. It really is fabulous. Even if you don't have any money to spend, my friends, look through this auction. It's beautifully arranged and very artfully. All the items are articulated in really fun ways. So do enjoy just your, a cruise through the auction museum, if you will. And Friday, 11/11 at 11 a.m. is a good time for final bids, because the auction closes officially at noon. There will be some items on Sunday as we also,
or on Saturday.
People, Saturday. Thank you, Saturday. Yes. So, what is coming
Lauren,
next?
I was just going to say, if anybody has any trouble with the auction, to call my number 541. I'll put it in the chat. 864-9116 is my cell, and say help.
All right. Thank you. And Rihanna, did you want to tell us about what's coming up with session 6 here this Saturday?
Yeah, this is going to be really exciting. We really encourage all of you to stay with the conversation. And this is an in-person gathering where we'll have a summary, and we're really looking at creating some action plans. We've generated some really powerful ideas, some synergy. We've met new people and made new connections. We all have a lot more information. And now we're ready to say, what are we going to do on behalf of our community? With each of us bringing our skills to the table, we know we have what it needs to create a number of different action plans to move forward. So please bring your bagged lunch, and we'll be able to have that conversation from not starting at 9 and ending around 3. So there will be an afternoon bonus you can see on the screen there, facilitated by Crystal Arnold and Ingrid, and offers and needs market. So really being able to look at what do we have, what do we need, how can we do this together? So RSVP is really appreciated, so that we can make sure that the room can accommodate us, and that everyone will have what they need there. So it's not to be missed. This is a critical part of the conversation and of the Water Solutions Summit as a whole.
Thank you, Rihanna. And I think that Stephen may have put a link for RSVP in the chat. We would like you to RSVP so we know how many folks are coming. The seating is limited. And another link that Stephen will be putting into the chat is the feedback form. You know, we really appreciate your feedback. A lot of you have let us know each session what really is working, what are your remaining questions, what would you like to see next. You are the key people to direct where we go from here. So please give us the feedback. You can find it in the chat. We'll also be sending you an email with that link. And now I'd like to move into closing sacred space. This has been a wonderful time together, another wonderful conversation with the panelists, a wonderful water blessing that really helped us sink into the deep, deep value that we have for water and the value that our ancestors and the people of this land have always held. So the gratitude for the water of the Rogue Valley, let's raise our glasses once again and toast to the water and to each other. Yes. I want to thank Jennifer Bryant of the Cow Creek Tribe, who led our beautiful water blessing. Again, the panelists were just superb and so engaging with each other and with all of us. The individuals and organizations that have donated to keep the Water Summit flowing is so valuable. And now I'd like to just go into appreciations. Number one, for you, the participants who are here this evening, have been here session after session, and so many of you will show up on Saturday and we'll get this work done, moving. So let's take a minute for anyone to speak up and express your gratitude and your thanks. I want to thank the technical wizards, Rihanna and Stephen, who have helped us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, friends. Thank you, relatives. We can do this together.
We can do this together. This is what it really takes.
I'm happy to jump in. I just wanted to say thank you to the amazing team of people who have put this together and who have brought those of us together from not only in Oregon, but for myself in California, Aaron in New Mexico. What you are doing is impactful, and I'm so grateful for all the time and energy that you've put into organizing this series of events, as well as the upcoming in-person event. Thank you so much for your passion and your energy and your love.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. It's been a wonderful time together. Ode to water, and thanks to water, and thanks to all of you.